Good morning, my students, and welcome back to our course on current issues in banking and finance. I'm Dr. Magda Mustafa Sadiq, Associate Professor of Economics at Sudan International University, Department of Economics. This course is at the Department of Banking, Semester 7. Uh, Today we are diving into Lecture 2, which covers one of the most critical, rapidly evolving and globally discussed topics in modern global economics and financial markets, climate finance. As future banking and financial professionals, understanding climate finance is no longer optional. Climate change poses structural risk to national economies and financial stability, but it also creates unprecedented opportunities for innovative financial capital deployment. In this lecture, we will break down what climate finance is, its primary objectives, where the money comes from, the key types and financial mechanism utilized, and the core principles required to make climate finance effective. Let us get started. What is climate finance? To begin, let us formally define what we mean by climate finance. At its core, climate finance refers to the flow of funds originating from public, private, and international sources, specifically earmarked to support actions that address climate change. Notice that climate finance isn't just one of single pool of money or a single type of loan. It's a broad ecosystem of funding mechanism, and broadly speaking, these funds are directed towards two central pillars: mitigation and adaptation. First, mitigation finance is focused on prevention and reduction. It finances activities that cut down greenhouse gas emissions or enhance carbon sinks. Examples include large-scale renewable energy projects like solar or wind farms, energy efficiency upgrades in industrial plants, and transitioning transport networks to electric vehicles. Second, adaptation. Adaptation finance is about resilience and preparedness. If we reduced all emissions today, the planet is already experiencing climate impacts. Therefore, adaptation finance helps communities and infrastructure withstand these changes. For instance, building flood barriers, developing drought-resistant agricultural crops, or reinforcing climate-resilient water networks. So remember this core distinction. Mitigation tackles the causes of climate change, while adaptation manages the consequences. Now that we understand the basic definition, let us examine why climate finance is mobilized. What are its overarching goals? As outlined in this slide, climate finance serves several interconnected objectives: reducing greenhouse gas emissions, driving industrial, transport, and energy sectors away from fossil fuels towards zero carbon alternatives. Second, promoting a renewable energy and energy efficiency, capitalizing clean energy transitions to make clean power affordable and accessible globally. Number three, strengthening resilience, protecting communities, especially vulnerable populations, against extreme weather events, sea level rise, and shifting agricultural zones. 4. protecting ecosystems and biodiversity, funding nature-based solutions such as reforestation and wetland conservation, which naturally absorb carbon and prevent environmental degradation. Fourth, supporting sustainable economic development, ensuring that economic growth in developing and emerging markets does not come at the cost of environmental destruction. Fulfilling Paris Agreement commitment or help countries meet their commitments under the Paris Agreement, helping nations meet their nationally determined contributions or NDCs under the 2015 Paris Agreement, which aims to keep global warming well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. In short, climate finance is the engine that transforms international climate promises into real-world actions. Let us come to the sources of climate finance. A key question in banking and finance is always, where does the money come from? Climate finance is sourced from 3 main channels: public finance, private finance, and international mechanism. First, public finance. This includes direct funding from national government budgets, sovereign wealth funds, multilateral development banks like the World Bank or African Development Bank, and bilateral development agencies. So public finance often plays a critical role in taking on early stage risk in projects where private investors might initially hesitate. Second, private finance. This is where commercial banks and institutional investors like pension funds and insurance companies, venture capital, and private equity step in. The private sector holds the vast majority of global capital. Mobilizing private capital is absolutely necessary because public funds alone cannot meet the trillions of dollars needed annually for the global energy transition. Third, international mechanism. These are specialized funds established under international treaties to channel financial resources from developed countries to developing nations. Prominent examples include the Green Climate Fund, GCF, and the Global Environment Facility, GEF. When these sources work together, we often see blended finance, where public or other funds are used to de-risk investments, attracting large streams of commercial private capital. Let us come to types of climate finance. First, mitigation finance. Let us now take a closer look at the specific types of climate finance, starting with mitigation finance. As we noted earlier, mitigation projects are designed to directly reduce or prevent greenhouse gas emissions. Currently, mitigation finance attracts the largest share of global climate investment, largely because many mitigation projects yield direct financial revenues. Let us look at the key examples. Solar and wind energy. Funding utility scale under solar parks or off-grid wind farms. Second, electric vehicles and infrastructure. Financing electric vehicle manufacturing as well as charging network infrastructure. Third, green buildings. Investing in energy efficient architecture, retrofitting older buildings, and smart heating cooling systems. Fourth, energy efficient manufacturing. Helping heavy industries adopt technologies that reduce power consumption, and carbon footprint. 4. Carbon capture and storage, CCS, funding frontier technologies that trap industrial carbon emissions before they enter the atmosphere, because many of these projects generate electricity or fuel savings. They create reliable cash flows, making them highly attractive for commercial bank loans, bond markets, and equity interventions. We continue on types of climate finance. Number 2, adaptation. Here we emphasize the vital importance of adaptation for developing economies. While mitigation looks at stopping future warming, adaptation finance focuses on protecting lives, livelihoods, and assets from the climate impacts that are happening right now. Key examples of adaptation projects include flood protection infrastructure, constructing seawalls, levees, and urban drainage systems to protect cities against storm surges and rising sea levels. Second, climate-smart agriculture, financing farmers to adopt heat-resistant seeds, deep irrigation systems, and sustainable soil management. Drought management, developing rainwater harvesting, water recycling plants, and early warning climate advisory systems. Fourth, coastal protection, coastal and water resource management, restoring mangroves and protecting freshwater aquifers from saltwater intrusion. So here is a critical challenge in financial markets. Unlike mitigation projects, adaptation projects often do not generate immediate financial returns. A seawall protects a community, but it does not sell a product. Therefore, adaptation finance relies heavily on public funding, grants, and concessional financing from international institutions. 3. We are continuing in types of finance, and we will study loss and damage finance. This brings us to the third and newest category in international climate policy, loss and damage finance. It is crucial not to confuse loss and damage with adaptation. Adaptation is preparing for expected climate risk before they happen. Loss and damage provides financial assistance after climate impacts occur, specifically for losses that are beyond human capacity to adapt to. This applies to 2 types of events: extreme weather events, such as catastrophic floods, severe typhoons, or prolonged heat waves that destroy infrastructure and wipe out national GDP. Slow onset events, such as desertification, glacier melt, or permanent sea levels rise that renders land uninhabitable or unflammable following international climate negotiations. Most notably, at recent UN Climate Conference, COPs, a dedicated global loss and damage fund was established to support vulnerable developing nations facing these irreversible climate losses. It represents an important step toward global climate justice and risk sharing. Financial instruments. Okay, let us now, what are these climate funds actually delivered to borrowers and project developers? Through a rich toolbox of financial instruments, as financial professionals, you should be familiar with these instruments. CARES grants, direct financial transfers that do not require repayment, essential for research, capacity building, and urgent adaptation projects. Second, concessional loans. Loans offered at below market interest rates with longer grace periods, making high-risk green projects viable. Third, green bonds. Fixed income instruments specifically earmarked to raise capital for climate and environmental projects. This has been one of the fastest growing financial market segments globally. Sustainable linked loans or sustainability linked loans. Corporate loans where the interest rate is tied to the borrower achieving pre-agreed sustainability targets, KPIs. Carbon credits and markets, trading units representing certified emissions reductions, enabling companies to offset unmitigated emissions. We have also equity investments and grantees, taking ownership stakes in green startups or providing credit guarantees to absorb project risk and attract commercial lenders. Blended finance or blended result-based finance, combining public and private capital or releasing payouts only after verified climate outcomes are achieved. Choosing the right instrument depends on the project's risk profile, expected returns, and development stage. Let us come to principles of climate finance. And here we are going to summarize the key lessons and conclude the lecture. To wrap our discussion today, let us examine the foundational principles that ensure climate finance is delivered effectively and ethically. For climate finance to achieve real impact, it must be transparent and accountable. Clear tracking of where funds originate, how they are dispersed, and what emissions reductions or adaptation outcomes they deliver. Second, efficient and sustainable, maximizing impact per dollar spent while maintaining a long-term financial viability. Equitable, ensuring fair access to capital for vulnerable nations and marginalized communities who suffer most from climate impacts, despite contributing the least to historical emissions. Additional, climate finance must represent new and additional financial resources rather than simply relabeling existing foreign development assistance. It should be consistent with national priorities, aligned with the recipient country's own national climate strategies and economic needs. To summarize today's lecture, climate finance is dynamic, multidimensional field combining public policy, private capital, and specialized financial instruments across mitigation, adaptation, and loss and damage. I advise you to solve the revision questions at the end of this lecture. In our next lecture, we will explore a new topic in current issues in banking and finance. Thank you for your attention. Study the slide materials carefully, and I look forward to seeing you in our next session. Okay, thank you, my students.